There's something important about looking at the people around us and caring about them, seeing them as beautiful. It's very important because this is the way in which God reached out to us. He saw us and our diversity and our differences and our failings and our brokenness, and He loved us. And when we do that to other people who are not like us, and when we see the connection that we have with them as human persons longing to answer deep questions, something beautiful can happen. We can have an understanding and a sympathy and a compassion for them that in a lot of ways will begin to earn the right to share deeper things. But if we don't care about them and we're quick to reduce them down to you're doing it wrong, you don't have the proper understanding, then why would anybody want to listen to us? If we don't care about them as a person, what would be the point, right, of their listening to us? C.S. Lewis, who, of course, I and a bazillion other people are fans of, said, "The load or weight or burden of my neighbor's glory should be laid on my back, a load so heavy that only humility can carry it, and the backs of the proud will be broken." It's a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you'd be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. All day long we are, in some degree, helping each other to one or the other of these destinations. It's in the light of these overwhelming possibilities, it is with the awe and the circumspection proper to them, that we should conduct all our dealings with one another, all friendships and all love, all play, all politics. There are no ordinary people. You've never talked to a mere mortal. It's with immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendor. C.S. Lewis in The Weight of Glory articulates this very powerful idea that the human person, period, is profound. There's nothing about humanity that would say we're mere mortals. There's something really rich and incredible at work. And I think what's happened is that the human populace tends to devalue human life. But for those of us who are growing up within the Christian context, we begin to realize the value and the importance and the power of what it means to be alive. And I think in some ways, as we step back and we look at the broad gift of humanity, both artistically, mathematically, creatively, and the various arts, we start to realize that this is a huge opportunity we have to affirm and to lift up other people who are not like us, and to see the creativity of a God that is bigger than we've ever thought or imagined. Really, if you stepped back and you began to look a little bit at the ancient Near East and some of their kind of ways in which they tried to wrestle with these primordial questions, you would find that they have some basic themes that show up in their literature and their art. And I want to give you 5 basic mythic themes, common cultural patterns that we see in the ancient Near East. Now, I gathered this from the Inker Bible Dictionary. If you go and you start to look at sacred marriage and things like that, you'll find that there. The first is a dramatic representation of the death and the resurrection of the God. And I mentioned this before, but I think it's probable that some of you have heard it argued that because there are examples in other religions of a death and a resurrection of a God, that it minimizes the story of Jesus Christ and His death, burial, and resurrection. And I posit the exact opposite. I see it as a preparation of God working in the hearts of all of the world, readying them for His full self-disclosure. When we get to the discussion on divine revelation, I think that'll become a little clearer. The second mythic theme that we see common in the ancient Near East is the recitation or symbolic representation of the myth of creation. And look, all you have to do is start looking at any type of early religion. They have origin accounts of how the world came into being, and the first person, the explanation of good and evil. Look, that's what the first chapter of Nostra Aetate was kind of trying to get to for us, right? That we all as human persons have these deep questions. Religion is a response of those questions, and as primitive religions start to develop, they begin to refine things with sacred rite, rituals, doctrine, morals, stuff like that. The third mythic theme is the ritual combat in which the triumph of the god over his enemies is depicted. The fourth, the sacred marriage of the god and his goddess. And the fifth, the triumphal procession in which the king played the part of the god, or followed by a train of lesser gods or deities. In other words, I actually think that you can see a lot of modern movie cinema kind of playing off on some of these primary mythic themes. The epic hero king story is certainly one of them. And what we begin to realize is that the human person trying to come to grips with who they are has oftentimes stumbled into great truths in which they develop and flow in their understanding of who God is. But some of them kind of derail a little bit, and we can see that. And the reason for this derailment, as Catholics, we're going to note is sin. And so in just a second, I'm going to speak to us a little bit more about the impact of the way that God is revealing himself to all peoples, and we'll find this in Romans.